The following is my advice to a 15-year-old victim of molestation, neglect, and disempowerment. I'm going to talk specifically to you, but first I want to explain to anybody who's listening on some of the context. I'm going to read them some of what you sent me, some of what I sent you, and then I'm going to address your brother, your parents, the emergency hotline operator, and then just give you some general advice on yourself. But first, I wanted to mention that this was a long time coming. It's been almost a week since you dropped me your first message, but like I said, to say the least, the day that you contacted me, I had been robbed by Mexican police of my passport and the last of my money. And just wanted to mention some fun little fact for you is that plenty of people were here in the United States were saying, "Oh man, you should have said this, you should have done this," all this kind of thing. They're used to United States cops where you can say this and that and they'll just kind of shrug it off or whatever. These cops in Mexico have machine guns. So of course I could have played that card of, "Hey, listen here, and then some group could have vouched for the fact that Russ should have never been machine gunned down for arguing with cops. Nah, don't want to be that martyr. But now let's talk about you and the message to you, to me first. The first message I get from this person is, "Hi Russ, I've enjoyed watching your videos and it's really cool to get some new insight on how the world, society works. The world and society. I'm a 15-year-old girl, and as much as I try to be strong, I feel weak and powerless. The thing I wanted to talk to you about is kind of personal. Kind of. Since I was 13, my older brother, has been molesting me. I told my parents about it a few months ago because I couldn't handle it. They got me therapy, which didn't help much, but they want to keep everything in the family. They tell me to not tell anyone and not break up the family. I have to live in the same house with my brother for the next 3 years. I don't know how I'll be able to manage. Hearing his voice makes me taste vomit in my throat, and seeing him makes my body feel like I'm having a heart attack. I'm not American, and my parents come from a country where family is everything. They would rather die than embarrass themselves in front of my family. They drag me around to Thanksgiving dinners and family visits where I have to smile and pretend like I'm okay when I feel like I'm dying. I know that my parents will never go for sending me away or sending my brother away. So what are some ways I can become strong inside so I can deal with this? I don't want to grow up to be a basket case, or I don't want to be a basket case when I grow up." And so then I respond. I say, "Hi, your name. Nice to meet you, and I'm glad you're enjoying the videos." And before I get to the rest of my response, I want to clarify what that first sentence does. If somebody, and this is speaking to people generally, but now I'm just addressing you, because this applies to you too. If you ever deal with somebody who goes through this, the temptation is, as soon as you respond to them, to start saying, "Okay, listen here, victim, we must address you as victim. You are this thing. You were victimized. There's a problem in your life, but you are more than that." So when I say, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you. Glad you're enjoying the videos," there's other things that define you besides, "Oh, you are now this molested person, and that's who you are." If you define yourself like that, you'll just be that forever, and it will never go away. You will feel that forever. And if that were a service to you, I'd say, yeah, definitely do that, because then you can feel like a victim forever. But you will not be better served for that. Plenty of people in our culture, I'll say the United States, would insist, they insist that you feel this way about your situation, and that you have this much hate for your brother, this much hate for your parents, but still a little bit of knowing they mean well. And you kind of, and we'll get into that, the fact that you say, "I want to kill," that you've thought about, fantasized of your brother dying in various ways, and that you feel bad for your parents so that you otherwise understand them. That's relatively common. Some people would say, "No, you should hate them more too." And it doesn't suit you to define yourself by these experiences. You're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to be 50. And from then to now, from now till then, everything else is going to be defined by no less than how you handle this problem you've been through. So don't accept from others and don't accept from yourself, defining yourself just as a victim. It's enough to say, yes, you are a victim and you had this problem, but still, that's one little bit of advice I'll give to you, is to address people not just by the problems they bring to you, but just, oh, hello, how are you? Glad to hear and I mean that, like, hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. And glad you're enjoying the videos. I mean that stuff. If you hadn't mentioned all these other problems, I'd have left it there. Oh, plenty of people, they send me a message, oh, you're so great, or I like your videos. And I say, oh, nice to meet you. Glad you're enjoying the videos. So I don't just jump onto, well, you're a victim and here's why and here's how to become strong. It's not enough and it wouldn't be good advice. So the rest of my response to you, I say, I have a couple of questions for you before I can give you any advice about the situation. And then I say, one, what do you exactly mean by he has been molesting you? You have to be specific because that word can mean very different things to different people, and it can. And molestation can mean anything. Because in Spanish, for example, molestation means bother. That's all it means. They use it like something bothers me. Me molestado or something. Just it had bothered me. So what do you mean? And you meant something very serious, but the reason why you have to clarify. Seek first to understand. It's because if I just jump in the direction of assuming you mean that a parent had sex with you, because to some people, when they say molestation, that's what they mean, because they were molested by their parents and it was because their parent had sex with them. Not to say that your situation isn't as important as that. Yours is an entirely important situation, but you still have to clarify, what does someone mean by the words that they're using before you can just start giving advice. Two, I say, you say you're not American. What do you mean? Are you living in the USA, but originally not from the USA? And you clarified that. We'll get further down. I ask, have you tried to tell anyone? And then I ask, have you already considered any specific options that might be important for me to know? For example, violence against yourself, suicide, self-mutilation, these kind of things, cutting and all that. Violence against your brother, running away, etc. And once I understand these points, would you like for me to make a video of my advice to you? If so, I would certainly leave out any identifying information. That's one of those things you just have to clarify, because some people think, if once you've been a victim of something that serious, you think, well, maybe this person's just going to throw it all out there and expose me. And for those of you listening in, this person that sent me the message was exposed, was cast out and exposed to her parents by a well-meaning hotline operator, but nevertheless, that makes you feel helpless as hell if you're like, well, I feel completely disempowered. I'll reach out to this hotline, and then they trace the phone call with 911, and then they get her parents involved. The parents eventually do nothing. That's a preview of what happened. And to you, I'll say, just me saying that, since it hits home to you, you might feel exposed by me mentioning that. But like I told you in the context of our messages, this kind of circumstance is not unique to you. A lot of people go through that experience of having someone treat them wrong, trying to reach out, and then get exploited and put, well, now these people should care, and then they don't. So don't think that as soon as I said that, now they're going to know that it's me. No, that's a very common thing, and lots of people could be thinking, whoa, that must be the person I victimized. No, it's not specific to you. So then this girl gives me a response back to my message. She says, I'm just uncomfortable thinking about the details, but if it might help even one person like me, you can go ahead and mention the details. The details of touching is just rubbing on legs, touching legs and thighs, touching the vagina, but not inside, meaning just on the outside. The squeezing and touching my butt, getting on top of me, and dry humping and whatnot. There's one thing that I'll mention about these behaviors, particularly the rubbing the vagina on the outside but not the inside, and the dry humping. I asked you later on, and it might come to it. I don't remember what I put in the notes, but I asked you, does your brother have a girlfriend? And how old is your brother? And now he was 15 when this started. You were 13. You're 15 now. He's 17. And the dry humping, the simulated sex, I asked you, does your brother have a girlfriend or anything like that? And you said girls have been interested, but you don't think that he does or that he used to. It's important to understand that your brother is an awkward kid, an awkward, confused kid who doesn't know about sexuality. The problem with plenty of people who are going to engage you about this, if you ever bring it up to them, is they will not accept anything except that your brother is this monster that has molested you. Now, again, if that even remotely would be helpful to you, I'd say, yeah, your brother's a monster who molested you. Just hate him, think about killing him, and you'll be happy the rest of your life. It's not useful. First, let me tell you a little bit about why it's not useful. Your parents, from the area that you came from, I'm going to guess that your parents were relatively young when they had you, relative compared to like the United States, where people like to have kids in their 20s and 30s. I'm guessing that your parents, based on your age and your brother, they're not much older than me. I'm 34. As of this year, I've outlived Jesus. They're probably not much older than me. So while you have the frame of reference for your parents as these adults, who that's their thing, is to take care of you. Your parents are adults now, but they were your age once, and they were 5-year-olds once. They were 5-year-olds. They grew up awkwardly. They didn't know things. They kept in the dark about this, that. They met each other. They were together. They had your brother. They had you. They're just kids that haven't died. They just grew up confused and weirded out, had some kids, and they don't really know what they're doing. They're trying their best, ideally. That's not to even defend them. I'm about to go in and not defend them, but attack them in a minute. But just understand that you have a different context for your parents as these people. And likewise, you have a different context for your brother as this, he's older than you and he victimized you. Yeah, he is older and he did victimize you. But people my age and older and whatnot, they will not tell you it straight. They will not say your brother is just some awkward kid that made stupid decisions. I'm telling you this again, not at all to defend him, but because it's not useful to you for me to play along with the idea your brother is this giant idea that has hurt you. It's not useful to you. Your brother is some awkward kid who doesn't know about sex, had it hidden from him, and tried to make sense of it with you several times. Now here's how to deal with that. It's not to, well, since he's just an awkward kid, it's not important, or he's not bad. He's plenty bad, and it is important. And you can help yourself better by understanding his awkwardness, and let me prove to you how he is awkward, doesn't really know what he's doing. He's still to blame, but he doesn't know what he's doing, and you won't be served by thinking that he does, thinking that he's this mastermind of his own designs. He's an awkward kid. You say that he touched your vagina on the outside but not the inside. Let me tell you why. If this is your vagina down here, because, and this is like your belly button up here. Your brother probably touched you right around here. He probably would have touched you lower and on the inside if he even knew your anatomy. But it's very likely he doesn't. See, boys, their penis, like if your vagina is here, their penis is like here. And I know from my own experience, and plenty of other people have had similar experiences, my own experience as a young, awkward guy trying to touch a girl on her vagina, you just assume their vagina is where your penis is. So you're like touching this. So the reason he touched you on the outside and towards the top is he doesn't even know a woman's anatomy. He's just trying to emulate what he heard or what he saw in a movie or something. If he watches porn, then maybe he does kind of have a frame of reference for where a vagina might be, but he really does base it on his own body. That's the only thing he has a frame of reference for. So he awkwardly was trying to touch you differently, but he doesn't even know. And the dry humping stuff, that's just awkward trying to understand sex. It's not defensible, but realize it's understandable that he's just some awkward kid that grew up, was withheld information about sex, is trying to understand it, however wrongly he's trying to understand it, and he will be a monster in everyone's eyes for the rest of his life if they understand what's going on. And if it comes to be that that's what needs to happen, then that's what needs to happen. It's unfortunate, but your brother cannot go around molesting you and have you go, well, I understand my brother better now, so I'm going to let this slide because I don't want to ruin his life. He's ruining his own life. And I'll get more into who else is to blame, but he's ruining his own life. But the reason I'm trying to explain his humanity to you is because the way you've described it so far, you mentioned that he came into your room while you were sleeping and he touched you, and then the farthest that he's gone is actually getting on top of you and simulating sex with clothes on. I'm going to make a distinction for you between violent molestation and the molestation that is not particularly violent. Plenty of people would hate this kind of distinction because the idea is that if it's not violent, then it's not as bad. I'm not interested in whether or not we are blaming your brother sufficiently. We are. He's completely unacceptable, but it wasn't violent molestation. He didn't grab you by the throat. He didn't cover your mouth so you can't make a sound and rape you. That would still be a molestation and rape and whatnot. The reason why I want to make this distinction is not so that you can think it's not as important. It's entirely important. However, considering he hasn't gone so far as to be violent and all of this, you can still talk to him about it. There's a chance that if he actually understood how much he's going to ruin you by continuing this and ruin himself, but more importantly, if he understands this thing that he's using to masturbate you, he's using you as this vessel to understand himself, he will ruin your life with other men through the rest of your life. He could ruin you if he continues this kind of behavior. Let me tell you a bit about child molesters and pedophiles that I've dealt with and would-be child molesters and pedophiles. The way that I talk about subjects, I have a lot of people coming to me with very sensitive information. Just for example, pedophiles or would-be pedophiles who talk about love of children and so attracted to children, and I hear these horrible stories and they would never hurt a kid, but the kids are so beautiful and they just want to do this, that, and the other thing to the kid. Stuff that amounts to molestation. And I tell them the same thing I would tell your brother, but specific to these would-be molesters. I say, and a common theme among them is they just love the youthfulness of children, and children are so young and beautiful and all this kind of stuff, and these would-be molesters really think they can reinvent themselves and be happy if they could just connect with some of that beauty and innocence and whatnot by touching the child, fondling the child, all this. And what I say to them simply is, you would not be able to live even 100 lifetimes to process all of the regret you would have if you take something that you supposedly think is so beautiful and destroy it. You're going to take that happy, innocent smile and make it a miserable person for the rest of its life. It's far more likely that child, if you molest it, is more likely to end up an abuser. So not only are you going to ruin that happy smile, you're going to turn that person into someone likely to abuse other people, including children. And that's, if you can, not that I recommend going and trying to have conversations with child molesters or would-be child molesters, but there are plenty of people who have these notions of, no, I mean well when I fondle this 7-year-old, so that way that, or if I were to, so that way they're probably going to take it the way that I mean it. No, you will ruin their life forever. And that addresses your brother. He might think, he might just have you separate as this, she's just, I don't know how she's taking it, but I'm going to try some stuff. But if your brother sees your humanity, more specifically, the thing he's destroying, which is your humanity and your faith in other people, not just your faith in him, but other people, and we'll get into that. If he really understands that, he's much more likely to do something differently. And that's the only reason I make that distinction between he's not being violently sexual towards you, is because if he were, I wouldn't tell you, well, try to have a conversation. Maybe show him this video. I would say, well, you need to keep telling people, but eventually you might need to take matters into your own hand and stop him however you can. But even though you've dreamed about the death of him and everything, realize he's just an awkward kid trying to make sense of sex. So imagine if you were an awkward kid. Just try to imagine if you were an awkward kid trying to make sense of sex and someone kills you for it. Well, yeah, that makes sense because you're a girl, he's a boy, therefore he deserves death if he's curious. It's less about sex and more about not respecting your boundaries and your preferences. Even if there was no sex attached to it, if you just said your brother picks on you, I'd be giving you a lot of the same information. Like, try to talk to him or talk to someone else who can talk to him, or send him my video and make him understand, no matter how much he's learning by touching his sister here or there, or grabbing this, or pretending to have sex with, no matter how much he might be improving his knowledge of self and maybe even girls, he is going to make you a monstrous, unhappy person if he keeps doing that. And he will be a mess himself, and it will just escalate his willingness to, well, as long as I'm understanding myself and enjoying myself, there's no limit to how I will treat other people. But he's still just a kid. And if you give him feedback, or if someone gives him feedback, if you help your parents to be convinced to take this serious enough now, it can be nipped in the bud and it won't escalate. But as of now, it is entirely too far already. There's no reason to say, well, he's not violent, therefore we'll let it slide, or we care about family, therefore we won't expose him. That doesn't help him. It certainly doesn't help you. So more of the message. Then you described to me where you're from and everything, and as you know, I'm not going to go into that because it's a little too identifying. I asked you who knows about this, and you said your parents know, your therapist knows, and a hotline that you called knows. The hotline is how your parents found out. You called the hotline, and it's a confidential line, and you try to get advice on sexual abuse. The lady on the phone thought that you were suicidal and unsafe and traced your phone, and the police came to your house and let your parents know. And the police decided it wasn't a big enough deal to do anything criminal about, and so they left it to your parents to solve something. Your parents didn't do anything. Well, they did worse. They're sweeping it under the rug and insisting that you play happy family together. And this is a problem, but actually let's go with that. So your parents, you at some point mentioned how you understand family matters to them, and you sympathize with them in so many words and whatnot. But your parents, like I said, your brother is just this kid 10 years ago. He was a 7-year-old. He's not the problem. He's a symptom. But that symptom needs to be stopped. So it's fine to focus on him. But let me give you some other examples of parts of the problem. Your parents, who are about my age probably, they are not blameless. There is no such thing as we care so much about family that we're going to let our son molest our daughter, or we're going to forgive without dealing with the problem. We're going to forgive him and allow this atmosphere to continue, whether the molestation or just the legacy of the molestation. Your parents are not blameless, and so it's not enough for you to understand your parents and hate your brother, and it's not enough for you to hate your parents either. If you felt the same way, just imagine you're angry enough at your parents to imagine the same way that you imagine your brother dying. Imagine your parents the same way, for in some ways facilitating your brother. That won't help you either. But before you can understand your parents, you have to be realistic and somewhat mad at them for facilitating the situation. But then after that point, you can realize they don't really know what they're doing. No one trains a parent for this. When your parents were 7 years old, then 17, then 27, and probably around 37 they are now. No one tells you, okay, 5-year-old son to your father, 5-year-old daughter to your mother, if you ever have kids, here's how to treat them. And if your son ever molests your daughter, here's what. Your parents have never been through this. They don't know what to do. And that doesn't excuse them. But it does require that they be called what they are, which is enablers of your brother. They're allowing this, and they are not blameless. So don't just think of them as blameless. Blame them. I would recommend letting them know that you blame them, in part. But then you have to understand them. We're going to get to the fact that they all have to understand you. You're going to be the last person I address, and then I'll say what I think you should be doing, etc. They need to be understanding you better. But a way that you can be active and help that process is to tell them, like, you're not blameless. He's not blameless. I'm the victim here, and you all are a mess. See, as bad as you think you have it, and you have it plenty bad, you I'm talking to, your parents have it worse, and your brother has it worse. Your brother is a molester who, as of now, is getting away with it. You know what that's going to create in him? The idea that he can molest people without consequence. Your brother's going to end up entirely a mess if this doesn't get solved. I'll give you one example. My friend, I recently made a video about gun control stuff. It's called A Solution to the Gun Ban, something like that. One of the parts I mention in it is a friend of mine who used to do similar stuff to his sister and to girls in general, just kind of bothering them sexually, just to do nothing aggressive, but just violating their boundaries. And he was never really getting in trouble, and he would cause this trouble, never get. He's in jail now for murdering a woman. He beat her while he was robbing her, just like 2 years ago, and she ended up dying from the wounds. That is the kind of behavior your brother is being set up for. He's going to be even more out of control. So he has it actually worse than you. Your parents have it worse for you because they are going to stay trapped in this situation where they don't want to really deal with it. They don't want to really deal with your circumstance. So they're going to pretend like they can go to the Thanksgiving dinners and the family gatherings and just pretend. Meanwhile, imagine how you'd feel if you had a child and that child was treated this badly as you are. And you just, for whatever reason, I know you say, I would never do that. Just imagine, for whatever reason, you're trapped into allowing or facilitating or downplaying what happened to your daughter. That's how trapped your parents are. So you have it plenty bad, and it's fine for you to feel like a victim, but don't assume always the victimhood, because that just doesn't help you. But also realize your parents and your brother, they even have it worse. But of course, we're not here to feel bad for them or give them advice. Not really. This is for you. I'm telling you that they have it worse so that you can understand whatever you have to do, even if it ends up your brother goes to jail and your parents go to jail. You could probably never imagine, I could never put my parents in jail. They would be better off coming out of jail in 3 or 4 years or even 10 years. Sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, they would be better off coming out of jail and being remorseful and being right thinking than 10 years from now never having dealt with the fact that their son was molesting their daughter and they just played it off. So what I'm saying is they are worse off, which frees you up. Do whatever, nothing violent or ridiculous or asking someone else to do violence, but if you have to get to whatever shelters they have or anything and completely blow the whistle on your brother and your parents, worst case scenario, absolutely. You can do that. They will be better off eventually for it. They'll resent you for your brother might resent you. He might even get real hostile. He'll be better for it. So don't think for a second you have to sacrifice your safety because your parents were just kids once. No, they still need consequences for their careless behavior towards you. More of this. You said, I never wanted to die, but I want the sadness to end. That's a precursor to wanting to die, by the way. So if you want the sadness to end, you either have to deal with it, but if you are encouraged to just put it off, that will cause the idea of, the sadness needs to end, even if I kill myself. So take it serious, and I know that you are. I've had countless, in caps, I've countless fantasies of all the ways I could kill my brother. I wouldn't do it. You think that, but everyone who's ever killed someone, they didn't think, no one who kills takes it lightly. Eventually, it gets easier if someone kills several people, then it's not as much trouble because you have to compartmentalize yourself once you've killed someone, and then you can do it. But don't think that you're this exceptional person who thinks all these murderous thoughts, but I would never do it. That's how it starts. It starts thinking of ways you could, then thinking of justifications of why you might. It doesn't go much further than that sometimes, because all you need to do is just tell someone about it and they say, well, I'm going to do it. And you go, okay, well, if that's what you want to do. This could end up with very violent things happening. So don't take lightly the fact that you could end up suicidal or that you could end up homicidal, killing other people. You need to take it much more serious than just thinking, oh, I would never do it. If you're thinking these fantasies about killing your brother, it's not impossible that you would act on them or allow others to act on them. Instead of that, you really need to think in terms of that will not serve you at all. No one is really going to believe you're a victim if you end up killing your brother. They'll feel bad for you if you end up killing yourself, but you don't want to do that either, of course. But you might get off with the whole, in Canada, there was actually an example recently of a wife trying to get her husband killed, and she ended up getting off, no jail time, because the courts ruled that she was battered, and so she got away with it. So with that as a frame of reference, there are, in the United States too, there are plenty of situations where you might get away with hiring someone to kill your brother or killing him yourself and claiming, oh, I was just so distraught. But let me tell you something about reality, which is outside of legality sometimes. It could be legal. You could get away with it in the eyes of the law. You will never get away with it in your own mind. Just like your brother will never, or not your brother, I was talking about the child molesters who could never live even 100 lifetimes and undo the way that they've ruined this happy, fresh child that they just wanted to feel a connection with. Same, you will never be able to really live it through if you choose to hurt your brother. I mean, to kill him. The hurting of sending him to jail or anything like that. He needs some form of redirection, so that's fine. But even though I'm just pointing out that even if you were to get away with hiring someone or being, you, especially after hearing this, you will know that that wasn't the right thing to do. And even though people are telling you, no, it had to be done, you're the victim, therefore you get to kill who you want, you will know better and you will regret it the rest of your life. You'd be on talk shows and people would say, wow, that was so heroic of you because you were standing up for yourself and violence against women is never okay. You will know that you messed up and the rest of your life you'll be regretting it. And if you think you feel bad now, you would feel infinitely worse. And no better about this situation either. It wouldn't solve your confusion and anger. Certainly not towards your parents. Okay, that's actually all the notes on here. So, talked about your parents, talked about your brother. I want to talk a bit about the hotline operator, then I'm going to address some things to you, and then talk about giving advice to people who go through these kind of things, because you'll be in a great position to give advice to people who go through these things based on what you've gone through. So first, the hotline operator. That lady absolutely betrayed you. You have this horrible situation. You call them secretly, they trace your number, and then expose you. Or so the story goes. But again, imagine this hotline operator. A lot of people who choose to do that kind of thing, they've been victims themselves. So it's messed up that she would take everything out of your hands, disempower you, and expose you to your parents and the cops. But think of it from that hotline operator's position. Every time the phone rings, no one calls them saying, hey, I'd like to order this pizza. No one calls them saying, oh, just seeing how you are. Every time she picks up the phone, it's someone who's getting abused. Every single time. And they have to make decisions like, okay, does this person sound like they're getting abused enough to where they kill themselves or kill someone else? They have to make some pretty split decisions that can end in life and death. So it feels very disempowering to have, hey, I trust you. Oh yeah, well, I'm going to expose you. But keep in mind, she couldn't do much different based on what she really thought and based on all the experience she's had. So I say this for you to realize, don't resent her and don't doubt the usefulness of telling someone, even in confidence. Because it's very likely that now you're thinking, well, I can't trust anyone because I tried to trust the damn hotline operator, and they what is it called? They betrayed me. No, they were trying to help. So still try to reach out to people that you think is appropriate. Still even call a hotline. You can get good information from them. But keep in mind, this girl who answered the line for you, she might have been around my age, or older or younger, but she was 5 at some point. She grew up at some point. She wanted to help people who were being abused at some point. And she betrayed you for the fact that she thought you were going to kill yourself. So don't be turned off at the idea now of seeking help from people. And now to you. Keep watching my videos because it'll help you to see there's a lot more in the world that's going bad and or that there's bad and needs problems solved. Not because you shouldn't take your problems serious. You should, and you should solve this. But your legacy in life is going to be a lot more than, oh, that girl who was molested at 13 and then she was sent a message to Russ at 15 and then she killed herself or she killed her brother or she sent her parents to jail. Or you're not going to be this girl who, 20 years from now, you think that that's forever. 20 years from now, you're going to be like, wow, it really wasn't that long. 20 years from now, when you're 35, you're going to be thinking, wow, I am a lot more, you're going to remember this and you're going to think, yeah, I'm a lot more than just this person who went through this thing. You're going to do something. It's within your power. You might not. You might just crash and burn if you so choose. But if you keep your hands on the wheels, whatever that means, and direct yourself, you can be better off for this happening. Certainly not a reason to be thankful that it happened, but you can be better off with the experiences you learn. A popular thing that we say is, it's not the cards you're dealt. You were dealt the card of being molested by your brother. That happened. It was dealt. That happened. You can't not have it happen now. Now, it's not what you're dealt. It's how you play it. It's a card game reference. Like, if you play the game right, the game of life, you'll be better off for what you've been through. If you could simply undo it, I'd recommend that. I'd say, well, you really ought to undo that. You can't, though. So you have two choices. Deal with this situation a self-destructive way, a way that doesn't suit you, a way that doesn't help you. Or you can do it the way that actually helps you. And then you consider, okay, I want to be helped, and I want to help my brother, help my family. They're secondary, though. Whatever needs to happen to them needs to happen to them. You don't need to be second and third guessing and triple guessing any choice you make, because I do want to be better for myself, but my parents, I feel bad, and I don't want to embarrass them, and they don't want to be embarrassed. It's too late for that. Your parents are much better served not facilitating your misery. And likewise, your brother, of course, he's not served if he's kept immune from the consequences of what he's done. So what I would say to you is, do get a hold again of these abuse people, hotlines and whatnot. Talk to your therapist about results and what options are available to you legally, and your therapist will have to go along with that. If it's a real therapist, hopefully it's not just some person that your parents put you with. It has to be a real therapist, because then they will be liable if they facilitate you having gone through this and not been protected. So continue talking with your therapist, and then get back to me and keep me, let me know how things are going. But one thing to remember is something that a philosopher from like 600 BC, his name was Heraclitus. From him we get the saying, you can never step in the same river twice, because you change and so does the river. So the next time you go to your therapist, for example, or the next time you talk to your brother, the next time you talk to your parents, you've never talked to them. The you from days ago talked to the them from days ago. Things change. So hopefully after this video, you'll have a different frame of reference for, it's fine to be a victim. I mean, it's not good to be a victim, but I mean, it's fine for you to feel that you're a victim. But don't define yourself by this situation, and don't define the rest of your life by the fact you want to feel like you're good, your brother's bad, you're the victim, therefore it just won't help you. Instead, realize, you know what? If I were if I was 30 years from now, if you were 45 years old and you saw a 13-year-old get molested till they were, or you heard of a 13-year-old getting molested till they were 15, but you saw it, and there's no emotional, I mean, you feel bad about that, but it's not you. As that 45-year-old, you should still want to punish that 15 to 17-year-old, your brother. You should still want him to not do those kind of things. You do want to protect the girl, but you also want to change the direction of the boy, change the direction of those parents. Make them be better parents. Your parents need to be better parents. Again, it's very hard in this world to just wake up one day and be born. Your parents were born to your grandparents. They eventually met each other. They had you kids. And now they're stuck in the position of having to navigate a very difficult culture in general, but navigate them from the culture that you come from. You say family is everything to your culture, and I know enough of people from your culture that is true, but it's even more because as immigrants, you have to stick together because it's a very difficult and often dangerous atmosphere. So your parents are having to navigate all this, and it is very difficult, but they are not better served by neglecting their daughter. So think of all these things. I recommend that by the time you get to this, stop and think for a bit, however long, maybe I'll think on some concepts. I recommend, I should have said this at the beginning, but I recommend taking notes. But it's fine. You watched it all the way through this time. No, what I recommend is as you think for a bit, just kind of think. Don't worry too much. Don't try to grab a hold of something. Just think about the things I've said and how you've taken them. Think of how they hit you. But I recommend before doing much of anything else, like while it's still fresh in your head, maybe the next day, but maybe right away, watch the whole video again. Because there's plenty that you might have missed. Like when I start out defending your brother, seemingly you might have missed this. There's things you could have missed or things you might understand differently now that you've seen the whole video. I recommend watching the whole thing again, having some paper or something to type up. And then when something hits you, pause it and make a note about it. Because then you'll really understand what I'm saying, but also you'll understand how you're taking it, and you'll build, see, I'll say something, and something, you'll build off of it, something that's completely more important for you. You take these notes, you understand it better, and then you can set this video aside at some point. You'll have the notes that really matter to you, and you can really understand what you think you ought to do, or other avenues you have, or other ways of thinking of the situation. But simply, I recommend that you watch one more time and take notes, and then look back at your notes. Think more about it before you think to do anything. And drop me a line. I think that's it. So again, it was nice to meet you, and I hope you enjoy these videos further, and talk to you later.